Crosswinds of Destiny by Carl Watson. The setting sun painted the Wyoming sky in hues of amber and crimson as Josephine Carter stepped down from the stagecoach, her legs stiff from the 3-day journey. Sweetwater Springs was nothing like the bustling streets of Philadelphia she had left behind, but that was precisely why she had come. The small frontier town, with its single dusty main street lined with wooden buildings, offered exactly what she sought: anonymity and a fresh beginning. "Miss Carter?" A deep voice called from behind her. She turned to find a tall man with broad shoulders approaching. His face was tanned from years under the western sun, and piercing blue eyes studied her with undisguised curiosity. Despite the trail-worn appearance of his clothes, there was something undeniably commanding about his presence. "Mr. Walsh, I presume?" she replied, extending a gloved hand. "Samuel Walsh," he confirmed, taking her hand briefly. "I own the Crosswinds Ranch where you'll be staying." His gaze swept over her traveling ensemble and numerous trunks with barely concealed amusement. "You packed for quite a lengthy visit." "I packed for permanence, Mr. Walsh," Josephine corrected, lifting her chin. "As my letter explained, I intend to establish myself here." A flicker of something, perhaps respect, crossed his features. "Indeed. Well then, let's get you settled. My wagon's just over there." As they loaded her belongings, Josephine felt the stares of the townspeople. A woman traveling alone to the frontier was unusual enough. One who arrived with the evident trappings of wealth was even more remarkable. "They'll stop gawking eventually," Samuel assured her as he helped her onto the wagon seat. "Folks here are just curious about newcomers, especially ones like yourself." "Ons like myself?" "Eastern ladies don't typically choose Sweetwater Springs unless they're desperate or running from something." His eyes met hers directly. "Which is it for you, Miss Carter?" Josephine stiffened. "My reasons are my own, Mr. Walsh. Our arrangement is strictly business. You provide lodging, and I pay rent. My past needn't concern you." Samuel's mouth quirked into what might have been a smile as he flicked the reins. "Out here, everybody's running from something or towards something else. No judgment from me." The wagon rattled down the main street and eventually turned onto a winding dirt road that led away from town. As they traveled, the landscape opened before them, rolling hills covered in sagebrush, distant mountains framing the horizon, and the vast expanse of open sky unlike anything Josephine had ever witnessed. "It's beautiful," she murmured, almost to herself. "Gets under your skin," Samuel agreed. "Most folks either love it immediately or can't wait to leave. There's little middle ground when it comes to Wyoming Territory." After nearly an hour's journey, the ranch came into view. The main house was larger than Josephine had expected, a handsome 2-story structure built of sturdy logs with a generous porch. Several outbuildings and corrals sprawled nearby, and in the distance, cattle grazed on the open range. "This is substantial," Josephine remarked, impressed despite herself. "My father started with nothing 20 years ago," Samuel explained as he brought the wagon to a halt. "Built it all from raw land. I've expanded since he passed." There was unmistakable pride in his voice. "The cottage where you'll stay is just beyond those trees. It's simple but sound." As he helped her down from the wagon, their hands connected, and Josephine felt an unexpected warmth at his touch. Their eyes met briefly before she pulled away, disturbed by her own reaction. "I'll show you to your accommodations," he said, seemingly unaffected. The cottage was indeed simple, a 1-room cabin with a small attached kitchen. But it was clean, with cheerful curtains at the windows and a stone fireplace that would provide ample warmth during the cold Wyoming nights. "It's perfect," Josephine said, and meant it. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Donovan, left some provisions for you." Samuel pointed to a basket on the small table. "She'll be by tomorrow to help you get oriented. Supper's at the main house at 6 if you'd care to join us." Josephine hesitated. "I wouldn't want to impose." "It's no imposition. Besides, Mrs. Donovan would be offended if you didn't at least come for your first evening meal. She's been cooking all day in anticipation." After Samuel left to retrieve her trunks, Josephine moved to the window, watching him walk away. There was something compelling about the rancher, a quiet strength and confidence that both intrigued and unsettled her. She reminded herself sternly that she hadn't come to Wyoming for romance or entanglement. She had come for independence to escape the suffocating expectations of Philadelphia society and the scandal that had followed her family's downfall. By the time she arrived at the main house for supper, Josephine had changed into a simpler dress, still fine by Western standards, but less ostentatious than her traveling attire. She was greeted by Mrs. Donovan, a robust woman with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands. "There you are, dearie. Come in, come in. You must be famished after that long journey." The interior of the main house reflected prosperity tempered by practicality. The furnishings were solid and well-crafted rather than ornate, and family heirlooms were displayed alongside useful items. It felt like a home rather than a showcase, unlike the sterile mansions Josephine had known back east. At the dining table, she met Samuel's younger brother, Michael, a friendlier, more talkative version of Samuel, and the ranch foreman, Jacob Turner, whose weathered face suggested decades of hard work on the frontier. "So, Miss Carter," Michael began as he passed her a platter of roast beef, "what brings a lady like yourself all the way to Wyoming Territory? Not exactly a common destination for Eastern socialites." "Michael," Samuel warned from the head of the table. "It's quite all right," Josephine assured him. "I'm hardly a socialite anymore, Mr. Walsh. And I came for the same reason many do, a new beginning." "Running from something, then," Jacob observed astutely. Josephine met his gaze steadily. "Perhaps running towards something instead." "And what might that be?" Samuel asked, his blue eyes studying her with unsettling intensity. "Independence," she answered simply. "The freedom to determine my own path." A thoughtful silence fell over the table until Mrs. Donovan bustled in with an apple pie, redirecting the conversation. As they ate, Josephine learned more about the ranch, 15,000 acres, hundreds of cattle, and the constant challenges of weather, rustlers, and the changing times as the railroad pushed ever westward. "And what will you do here in Sweetwater Springs?" Samuel asked later as they lingered over coffee. "I have some funds," Josephine replied carefully. "I thought perhaps a small business, a millinery shop, maybe. I have skill with needle and thread." "Town could use a proper hat shop," Mrs. Donovan nodded approvingly. "And you believe you can adapt to life here?" Samuel's tone wasn't challenging so much as curious. "It's a long way from Philadelphia drawing rooms." "I'm more adaptable than I appear, Mr. Walsh," Josephine replied with a small smile. "And Philadelphia drawing rooms lost their appeal for me some time ago." Later, as Samuel walked her back to the cottage under a canopy of stars that took her breath away with their brilliance, Josephine felt a strange contentment settling over her. The night air was crisp and clean, scented with sage and pine, so different from the coal smoke and close confines of the city. "Thank you for supper," she said as they reached her door. "Mrs. Donovan is an excellent cook." "She likes having someone new to fuss over," Samuel replied. "Fair warning, she'll likely try to fatten you up. She thinks all Eastern women are half-starved." Josephine laughed softly. "I shall consider myself warned." Samuel hesitated, then said, "If you need anything, the main house is just a short walk. Don't hesitate to come, day or night." "Even if it's just a spider that needs removing?" she teased gently. A smile tugged at his mouth. "Even then, though I suspect you're not the type to be frightened by spiders, Miss Carter." "No," she agreed. "Not by spiders, at any rate." Their eyes held for a moment too long before Samuel stepped back. "Good night, then." "Good night, Mr. Walsh." Josephine watched him walk away, silhouetted against the starlit sky, before closing her door and leaning against it. For the first time in months, she felt something like peace. The following weeks settled into a rhythm as Josephine began to adapt to ranch life. True to her word, she had secured a small space in town for her millinery shop and spent her days organizing it, ordering supplies, and beginning to create sample hats to display. News traveled fast in Sweetwater Springs, and curiosity about the Eastern lady starting a business brought potential customers to her door even before she officially opened. She rode into town each morning with whichever ranch hand was heading that way and returned in the evenings, gradually learning to handle a horse herself under Michael's patient instruction. The physical demands of her new life left her exhausted at day's end, but it was a satisfying tiredness, different from the emotional fatigue that had plagued her in Philadelphia. Samuel Walsh remained something of an enigma. He was unfailingly polite, but maintained a certain distance, their interactions limited to occasional shared meals and brief conversations when their paths crossed. Josephine told herself his reserve didn't trouble her, yet she found herself watching him when he didn't notice. The confident way he sat a horse, the respect his men showed him, the rare smile that transformed his serious face. "You're settling in well," he remarked one evening as they stood on the porch after supper, watching a spectacular sunset paint the western sky. "I find I like it here more than I expected," Josephine admitted. There's an honesty to this place, to the people. Most can't afford pretense when survival requires cooperation, Samuel observed. Eastern society games don't work well on the frontier. Is that how you see me? As someone playing society games? Samuel turned to face her, his expression thoughtful. No, not anymore. You work hard, adapt quickly, and don't complain about difficulties. That earns respect out here. Coming from the taciturn rancher, this was high praise indeed. Josephine felt a flush of pleasure at his words. Thank you. That means a great deal. A comfortable silence fell between them as the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky. Your shop opens tomorrow, Samuel said finally. Nervous? A little, Josephine confessed. But excited too. It feels right, creating something of my own. It's a good feeling, he agreed. Building something with your own hands, watching it grow. There was passion in his voice when he spoke of his ranch, a depth of feeling that made Josephine wonder what it would be like to have that passion directed at her. The thought startled her with its intensity, and she quickly pushed it aside. I should retire, she said, suddenly needing distance. Tomorrow will be a long day. Samuel nodded, but as she turned to leave, he called softly Josephine. It was the first time he had used her given name, and it stopped her in her tracks. The town social is Saturday evening, he continued when she faced him. I thought perhaps you might allow me to escort you. As neighbors, of course. As neighbors, Josephine repeated, her pulse quickening despite her efforts to remain composed. Yes, I'd like that. His slight smile stayed with her long after she'd returned to her cottage. The millinery's opening day exceeded Josephine's expectations. Women from town and surrounding ranches came to see her creations, and by closing time she had sold 6 hats and taken orders for 8 more. As she locked the shop door, a deep sense of satisfaction washed over her. This success, small though it might be, was entirely her own. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't notice the 3 men approaching until they blocked her path. Well, well. If it ain't Philadelphia's finest, drawled a voice that sent ice through her veins. Josephine looked up in shock to find herself facing Raymond Decker, nephew of the man whose financial scheme had ruined her father and so many others. What he was doing in Wyoming, she couldn't imagine, but the malicious gleam in his eyes boded ill. Mr. Decker, she managed, struggling to keep her voice steady. You're a long way from Pennsylvania. As are you, Miss Carter. Quite the coincidence finding you here. There's nothing for you in Sweetwater Springs, she said, trying to step around him. Decker moved to block her again, his companions flanking him with unpleasant smiles. Now that's where you're wrong. Uncle Harold was very interested to learn where you'd disappeared to, especially after those jewels went missing from his wife's collection. That's a lie, Josephine hissed, anger replacing fear. I took nothing. Your word against ours, Decker shrugged. And who will they believe? The daughter of a disgraced swindler or respected businessman? They'll believe me, came Samuel's steady voice from behind the men. Decker and his companions turned to find Samuel Walsh standing there, his stance relaxed but his eyes hard. This doesn't concern you, cowboy, Decker sneered. Miss Carter is my tenant and under my protection, Samuel replied evenly. So yes, it concerns me greatly. One of Decker's companions reached toward his belt, but Samuel's coat shifted to reveal a holstered revolver. I wouldn't, he advised quietly. Now I suggest you gentlemen continue on your way. For a tense moment, Josephine feared violence would erupt, but Decker apparently thought better of it. This isn't finished, he warned Josephine before backing away with his companions. When they were out of earshot, Samuel moved to Josephine's side. Are you all right? She nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. How did you know? I didn't, he admitted. I came to see if you needed a ride back to the ranch. Fortunate timing. Yes, she agreed faintly. Very fortunate. Who are they? Samuel asked as he guided her toward his wagon. Josephine hesitated, then realized she owed him the truth. Raymond Decker is the nephew of Harold Decker, a financier in Philadelphia. My father trusted him with his investments and those of many friends. It was all a sham. Decker absconded with the funds, but not before ensuring my father appeared complicit in his schemes. And was he? Complicit? No, Josephine said firmly. My father was many things, but not a thief. He took his own life when the scandal broke, leaving me to face the aftermath alone. The Deckers, meanwhile, somehow retained their social position while we lost everything. Samuel's jaw tightened. And the missing jewels? Another lie. When I spurned Raymond's advances, he thought I should be grateful for any offer in my reduced circumstances. He threatened to ruin what remained of my reputation. That's when I decided to leave Philadelphia. They reached the wagon, and Samuel helped her up before climbing beside her. "Will you be safe at the ranch?" he asked seriously. "They know where to find you now." "Decker is a coward at heart," Josephine replied. "He won't risk confronting you again." "Nevertheless, I'll have one of the men keep watch tonight," Samuel said as he flicked the reins. They rode in silence for a while before Josephine spoke again. "I should have told you about my past when I arrived. You had a right to know." "Everyone deserves privacy, Josephine. Your father's mistakes aren't yours." His simple acceptance of her story touched Josephine deeply. In Philadelphia, she had been judged and found wanting by association, doors closed in her face by former friends. Here was a man who judged her solely on her own merits. "Thank you," she said softly. Samuel glanced at her, his expression softening. "You're building a new life here. Don't let Decker rob you of that." The Saturday social arrived, and despite the encounter with Decker casting a shadow over her week, Josephine found herself looking forward to the evening. She wore her finest remaining dress, a deep blue silk that complemented her eyes, and arranged her dark hair more elaborately than usual. When Samuel came to escort her, his appreciative gaze as he took in her appearance sent warmth spreading through her. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You clean up rather well yourself, Mr. Walsh." Indeed, he cut a striking figure in his formal attire, so different from his everyday ranch clothes. The town hall had been transformed for the social with lanterns, bunting, and a small band playing lively tunes. It seemed everyone for miles around had come to dance, gossip, and enjoy rare sociability. "Miss Carter." "Your shop is a godsend, Miss Parker," the doctor's wife exclaimed upon seeing her. "I've had more compliments on my new hat than anything I've worn in years." Similar praise followed as Josephine was introduced around the room. Samuel stayed close by, watching with evident satisfaction as she was welcomed into the community. "May I have this dance?" he asked when the band struck up a waltz. Josephine placed her hand in his. "I'd be delighted." As they moved across the floor, she was surprised by how naturally they fell into rhythm together. Samuel danced well for a rancher, guiding her with the same quiet confidence he showed in all things. "I never imagined I'd be waltzing in Wyoming," Josephine murmured, smiling up at him. "Are you disappointed?" he asked, his arm firm around her waist. "Not in the least." Their eyes held, and something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of the attraction that had been building since her arrival. Josephine felt her breath catch as his gaze dropped briefly to her lips before returning to her eyes. The moment was broken when Michael appeared at their side. "Mind if I steal a dance with the prettiest lady here, big brother?" Samuel released her reluctantly. "She might mind being described that way, Michael. Miss Carter isn't some saloon girl to be flattered with hollow compliments." "It's hardly hollow when it's true," Michael protested good-naturedly. "But you're right, my apologies, Miss Carter. Would you do me the honor of this dance?" Josephine laughed. How could I refuse such a charmingly corrected invitation? As she danced with Michael, she was conscious of Samuel's eyes following her around the room. Later, they shared punch by the windows, conversing with neighbors and enjoying the festive atmosphere. It was the most relaxed Josephine had seen Samuel, and she treasured this glimpse of the man behind the serious rancher. The evening was drawing to a close when Raymond Decker appeared in the doorway with his two companions. A hush fell over the room as they swaggered in, clearly having fortified themselves with whiskey before arriving. "Don't stop the festivities on our account," Decker called, his words slightly slurred. Samuel moved protectively to Josephine's side. "What do you want, Decker?" "Just enjoying the local entertainment," Decker replied, his gaze fixed on Josephine. "Though I'm surprised to find Miss Carter here pretending to be respectable company." A murmur ran through the crowd. "Perhaps you good people should know who you've welcomed into your midst," Decker continued loudly. "This woman's father swindled dozens of honest investors out of their life savings before killing himself to escape justice. And the daughter is no better." "That's enough," Samuel interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. "The truth hurts, doesn't it, Miss Carter?" Decker sneered. "Did you tell your new friends how you tried to seduce me to save your reputation? Or about the Decker family jewels that mysteriously vanished after your last visit to our home?" "You're drunk, Decker," Samuel said evenly, "and a liar besides. I suggest you leave before things get unpleasant." Decker laughed. "Defending her honor? She hasn't got any." The words were barely out of his mouth when Samuel's fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling. Decker's companions rushed forward, but Jacob Turner and several other ranchers moved to intercept them. "Get him out of here," Sheriff Taylor ordered, appearing from the crowd, "and keep him out." As Decker was escorted away, still shouting accusations, Josephine stood frozen, humiliation washing over her. The room had gone silent, all eyes upon her. Without a word, she gathered her shawl and fled through the side door into the night air. She had made it halfway down the street when Samuel caught up with her. "Josephine, wait." "Please," she said, not turning. "I can't face them now." "You've done nothing wrong," he insisted, moving to stand before her. Everyone knows Decker was talking nonsense. "Do they?" she asked bitterly. "Or will they wonder if there's truth to his claims? That's how it works, Samuel. The suspicion never truly fades." "Not here," he said firmly. "This isn't Philadelphia. People here judge by actions, not rumors. And your actions speak well of you." Tears welled in Josephine's eyes. "My father wasn't a thief," she whispered. "But he was weak and foolish. He trusted the wrong people, and when everything collapsed, he took the coward's way out, leaving me alone to face the consequences." Samuel's hands came to rest gently on her shoulders. "You're not alone anymore." The simple statement, spoken with such quiet certainty, broke something open inside Josephine. The tears she had held back for so long spilled over, and Samuel drew her against his chest, holding her while she wept. When the storm passed, she looked up to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "I'm sorry," she began, embarrassed by her display. "Don't be," he interrupted, "not with me." His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing away a lingering tear. "I've wanted to do this since the day you arrived," he murmured, and then his lips were on hers, gentle but insistent. Josephine melted into the kiss, her hands sliding up to his shoulders as he pulled her closer. Time seemed suspended as they stood there under the vast Wyoming sky, connected in a way that transcended words. When they finally broke apart, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "I'm not a man given to romantic declarations, Josephine, but I need you to know that whatever happens with Decker, whatever happened in your past, it changes nothing for me." "And what exactly is there to change?" she asked, needing to hear him say it. "My feelings for you," he answered simply. "I love you. I think I have since you stepped down from that stagecoach looking like you owned the whole territory." Josephine laughed softly, joy bubbling up inside her. "I certainly didn't expect to find love in Wyoming Territory." "Is that what you found?" he asked, suddenly vulnerable. Instead of answering directly, she raised herself on tiptoes and kissed him again, pouring all her feelings into the gesture. When they parted, she smiled up at him. "Does that answer your question, Mr. Walsh?" His answering smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "It does indeed, Miss Carter." The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted their moment. They turned to find Michael and several other townspeople approaching. "Josephine," Mrs. Donovan called, "we've been looking everywhere for you, dearie. You shouldn't have run off like that." "I'm sorry," Josephine began, but the older woman waved her apology away. "Nonsense. It's that awful man who should be sorry. Sheriff Taylor's locked him up for the night, and he'll be sending him and his cronies packing on tomorrow's stage. We came to make sure you know we don't put any stock in his vile accusations," added Miss Parker firmly. "You've proven your character since arriving, and that's what matters to us." Murmurs of agreement rose from the others gathered there. "You see?" Samuel said softly, his arm around her waist. "I told you this isn't Philadelphia." Overwhelmed by their support, Josephine could only nod gratefully. Later, as Samuel walked her back to her cottage under a sky ablaze with stars, Josephine felt a profound sense of belonging she had never experienced before, not in the grand houses of Philadelphia nor anywhere else. "What happens now?" she asked as they reached her door. "Now," Samuel replied, taking both her hands in his, "I'm going to court you properly if you'll allow it, and perhaps when you're ready, we might discuss a more permanent arrangement." "I think I'd like that very much," Josephine smiled. As he bent to kiss her once more, Josephine knew with absolute certainty that she had found her place in the world, not running from the past, but running toward a future brighter, than any she could have imagined, here under the wild horizons of Wyoming with this man who had claimed her heart. In the months that followed, Josephine's millinery business flourished, Samuel's courtship progressed with determined tenderness, and the ranch remained a haven where she found not just love but family. The shadows of Philadelphia receded, replaced by the brilliant light of the western sky, and the promise of tomorrow, a tomorrow that would belong solely to them, written in their own hands on this untamed frontier.